which are the floaty things in the goop. They're actually little organs, kind of like little stomachs and little hearts and little lungs. And then there's inclusions. These are nutrients that are not dissolved in there, not dissolved in the fluid. They're kind of like little floaty things. Here's what a typical cell looks like. You'll recognize the nucleus, and here's the plasma membrane with its double layer of little phospholipids, and then everything between the nucleus and the plasma membrane is all called cytoplasm. The yellow stuff is the cytosol, and then these floaty thingies, these guys are the organelles. And we're going to go over now each one of these things floating in here. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it now, and then we'll see the slide for it in a minute. First thing we want to talk about is this big blue structure. It takes up a lot of the cell. This blue structure is called endoplasmic reticulum. Could that be any longer and more ridiculous to say? Endoplasmic reticulum. And there are two kinds, rough and smooth. And the rough one has all this red bumpy stuff on it. That's why it's called rough. And the smooth one looks like coral. And these two actually have two different functions. The rough endoplasmic reticulum transports proteins after they're made and helps with protein synthesis. So it's kind of a helpful little thing, and then transports the proteins that have been created to another place.
Wow. Interesting.
This smooth endoplasmic reticulum here, this is the one that actually creates lipids. So the rough ER helps with making the proteins, and the smooth ER is the one that makes the lipids. It also helps you with drug detoxification. Okay, the next thing I want to go over is this Golgi apparatus, this green structure here.
The Golgi.
The Golgi apparatus is like a post office. So the rough ER is kind of like a subway system, right? Because it transports proteins. The Golgi apparatus is like a post office. It takes the proteins that the rough ER transports it to and repackages them and does 3 different things with those proteins after they've been repackaged. So it's like a post office. It takes the proteins in and then repackages them. These kidney bean shaped things are called mitochondria. They're known as the powerhouse of the cell. This is where your oxygen and glucose go in order for you to make energy. ATP is the energy of your body, and if you didn't breathe in oxygen or eat food, then these little mitochondria wouldn't be able to make ATP. You'll see a lot of these larger bally thingies floating in here. These are lysosomes or peroxisomes, also proteasomes. They don't have that listed here. Lysosomes are like little stomachs. They're full of digestive enzymes, and anytime something bad comes into your cell, it'll eat it and digest it.
Amazing.
Peroxisomes are little things that help to chew up any free radicals, and I believe alcohol also, to detoxify you from alcohol and free radicals. The centrioles here, these little things look like little crisscross pieces of corn from the Chinese restaurant. These little guys are actually going to help when the cell wants to divide. One centriole go to one end of the cell, another go to the other end of the cell, and they'll pull the cell apart. They're kind of cool. They have like these lightsabers that come out of them that grab the parts of the chromosomes to pull them apart. Cytoskeleton, I don't want to mention too much about these microtubules. These things just help keep the cell to give it a shape. And the last thing I want to mention are these ribosomes. These ribosomes, we talked about already, they're made here in the nucleolus, and then they come out through the nuclear pore. They land on this rough endoplasmic reticulum, or they can also just float out here freely. You see them? And they're the place where proteins are actually made. Protein synthesis is big business in your cells. Okay? It's kind of like the McDonald's of your cells. Big business. Or the Walmart, even bigger probably. The Walmart of your cells are those ribosomes. That's making proteins is the big business of your cells. All right, so mitochondria, those little red kidney bean looking things, they're the powerhouses. That's where they take oxygen and they make ATP with it. Ribosomes, we just talked about those little red bally thingies. That's where proteins are made, and they're either floating around the cytoplasm or part of that rough ER. Endoplasmic reticulum. It's either rough or smooth. The rough one is the one with the ribosomes, and so it helps to make proteins. The smooth one is the one that makes lipids and detoxifies you from drugs and pesticides. So this is a little zoom-in picture of the rough ER. Remember, the rough ER is made rough by the ribosomes. So this is a picture of the ribosomes sitting on the rough ER. This blue strip going through here is mRNA, which we'll talk about at the end of the lecture today. It sits on the ribosomes, and as it threads through there, it gives a code so that the ribosome can make proteins, and that's what this purple thing is. It's a protein. And then the rough ER drops it into a little, like, Jetson mobile and jets it off over to the Golgi apparatus. So that's the little Jetson mobile that the ER contributes to transporting the protein in. We're going to come back to this and look at this more closely in detail at the end, toward the end middle. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is that post office one, the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus is going to take the new protein, repackage it, and then it can do three things with it. It can either put the protein into a secretory vesicle. What's a secretory vesicle? Well, it looks like a little Jetson mobile like I just showed you. Here it is here. Okay, puts it in one of these little vesicles and then spits it out of the cell, like pukes it out. Blah. Okay? Those proteins that were put in here might be hormones. And so you need some thyroid hormone. Okay, we're going to spit you on out of the cell. Then it's going to go into your bloodstream and travel all around. Or this Golgi apparatus, this green thing, can also take those proteins and make it part of the cell membrane. Remember, we needed those protein channels as part of the cell membrane? So the Golgi apparatus can repackage that protein, make it part of the cell membrane, and then attach it to the cell membrane to make your cell stronger. The last thing that the Golgi apparatus can do with those proteins is that it can put in a little vesicle and make those proteins become enzymes. Do you remember last week when we talked about proteins? One of the main categories of proteins, besides being like collagen, keratin for your hair and skin, antibodies, hormones, one of the other categories was enzymes. So this protein then was taken from the ribosome, repackaged into becoming an enzyme protein, and then put in a little vesicle, and now it's a lysosome. So lysosomes are actually made by the Golgi apparatus, and the lysosomes are the little digestive enzymes. The lysosomes contain enzymes. The enzymes were made by the ribosomes, and the Golgi apparatus just packaged them in a little vesicle, and now it floats around the cell looking for bad things to eat, like viruses and bacteria that come into your cells. Peroxisomes, those are the other little vesicles, and they detoxify alcohol and formaldehyde and break down free radicals. So whenever you're eating badly or drinking alcohol, your peroxisomes are working overtime to help detox you. Centrioles, those are the ones that look like little crisscross pieces of corn, and they are, well, this is a terrible definition because you don't know anything about this yet, but it says that they direct the formation of mitotic spindle during cell division. What the heck does that mean? That means that when the cell wants to split, these little centrioles are going to send out their lightsabers, or mitotic spindle, and the mitotic spindle are going to attach onto the chromosomes. So that's what the centriole's job is, to send out these little mitotic spindles or lightsabers so the cell can split. Some other things that are on cells, but they're on the plasma membrane around the outside of the cell, and that would be cilia, flagella, and microvilli. Cilia are eyelash-looking little feathery things that move materials across the outside of the cell. And we have these in our lungs, so the cells can move dust up towards our lung, towards our throat, and that way it doesn't go down in our lungs and give us infections. And cilia also helps move the egg in the fallopian tubes, in the female fallopian tubes. Flagella is the only, well, you only find a flagella in humans in the man's sperm cell. And it's a little locomotive agent. It's a little whip-like tail to help the sperm get where he's going. Also found on the outside on some cells are microvilli. You'll find these on the cells that are in the digestive system, little tiny finger-like projections, and they help to give a lot of places where nutrients can be absorbed in your intestines. So you'll never find one cell with all three of these. And lots of cells don't have any of these. There are just a few special cells that have these. There's not even one cell with two of them. So this is the way cells look. Here's one cell. These are actually fibroblasts. They help make